All right, guys, here we go. Let's turn in our hymnals here to chapter 27, Marker Beacons. Chapter 27, Marker Beacons. What is a marker beacon?
The marker beacon is the thing that tells you where you are.
How does it begin to do that, Tyler?
It's on the runway, and is that the thing that's 1,000 feet past in the middle of the runway? Or is that not the same thing? No, it's not the same thing. That's my bad.
No, that would be the glide path. That would be that point there, the visual approach slope indicator or the precision approach indicator that takes you 1,000 feet beyond the threshold of the runway. Marker beacons, if they are on the runway, something has gone terribly, terribly wrong. So if you look in your books, and there was that beautiful illustration about where marker beacons are. Do you remember that in the video? Look at you. How does that feel to be on the same page?
It's the first time.
Nice.
First time.
Nice, pal. Welcome.
Just kidding.
We're glad you're here. So that's where the marker beacons are. Oh, and here's the interruption. God. Yeah, make sure you do that. Teacher Appreciation Week. Keep your doggone applause. I like Tommy Bahama.
I was watching the videos yesterday, and I was like playing them out loud for a little bit. I was just at my house with my friends, and when you were like, "Aloha," everyone was laughing so hard. All my friends think you're absolutely hilarious.
Well, I am. Yeah, I am. That's the thing. It's just that if they take the time to get to know me, they find that I'm really a pretty funny guy. I'm not nearly as scary as my reputation, I think. I've heard people, I heard from someone over the weekend that said, well, my son really wants to come see you, but he heard you're really scary.
Yeah.
What?
My little sisters are like, everyone, we walked by the aeronautics room today, and Mr. R was there. Okay.
It's all right. It's almost like a Sasquatch sighting, you know, one of those deals. That's pretty funny.
You yelled at me when I was in 5th grade.
I yelled at you?
Yeah.
Well, you probably deserved it.
Yeah, I was screaming
Well,
to the art room.
See, there you go.
I think you took me for a plane ride when I was in 5th grade, so I wouldn't know.
Yes, I did. Yes, I did. And that little line showed up on your scholarship application too, by the way, just so you know.
It did. It did.
So, all right, marker beacons, what they do, well, why am I telling you what they do? You tell me, you've done the reading. What do marker beacons do for us?
They confirm your glide slope accuracy.
Keep going.
Isn't that what Vaccine
Keep going.
Like they're like kind of, they like show your location because you can only like hone into them when you're like right above them.
Okay, that's correct. Very narrow broadcast area, and so your plane will only pick it up when you're pretty much just right over it. So what is it that tells you that you're over it, this marker beacon? What happens in the cockpit?
Does it make sound?
It makes sound, and if you look at the illustration, there are lights, are there not?
Yes.
We've done the reading, right?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. You get an audible signal and you get a light. And what it does is that it confirms where you are on your approach to a particular runway. That's what they do. They can be standalone, they can be co-located with a compass locator, and those things can be, good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Aaron.
Thank you. And they can be, so again, if you see LOM, that tells you that it's co-located with a compass marker, LOM, on those. You saw the reading. An LMM co-located with a middle marker. Okay, so that kind of tells you, good morning, Gavin. It's just that confirmation about where you are. So that's the purpose of the marker beacons. Let us go here. Now we will leave the islands. By the way, how many of you are aware of what I'm doing on June 24th? Anybody?
Are you running the marathon? Are you running the marathon?
I am, well, I'm doing a marathon. Let's put it that way. We'll see how far I actually run.
Can I come to Hawaii to cheer you on?
Here's what you can do. You can come with me, and you can do that. What I want you to do is keep the lava away from me, you know, as I'm.
Eruption like just a couple weeks ago.
It's still happening.
Oh, it is?
Yeah.
Still lava, there's lava everywhere.
Yeah, but it's on kind of the southeastern part of the island, Kilauea National Park. It's a long way from Kona, and the winds right now are favorable, pushing all of the ash and all of the gases and stuff out to sea. But it's yeah. So anyway,
The island's gonna get bigger.
well, that's true. That it grows every day. So yeah, so that's just the thing there. I was just leaving there as we left the islands. So you can see this. Your test questions are going to include what's going to be the range of your markers, your outer markers, middle markers. In some rare cases, you kind of get an inner marker. You can see here on the screen that we're looking at what these lights are: blue, amber, and white. Okay. And they make different sounds as you pass them. They will actually, it'll pop up on your G1000, it'll pop up on your display. So that's one way of just checking where you are on your approach and where you are coming down the glide slope or glide path with this as well. So what are some other ways that we can tell where we are along our approach? Besides seeing our glide slope indicator, besides seeing our localizer indicator, besides the outer markers, what else can we have?
Your approach fixes.
Approach fixes, how do we know where they are?
Like, are they a certain amount of miles away?
Distance, well done story, distance. So we can combine DME with this as well to kind of give us that countdown. Now the one thing you need to be aware of is where the distance is actually being measured from. Because in some cases you're going to look at something on a particular approach and you're going to think you're a lot further from the actual runway than you are, because you're thinking that that signal, the DME, is emanating from the approach end of the runway. Where could it be coming from?
Oh, the other side.
The opposite end of the runway. And so in that case, the actual runway itself, the actual signal is giving you DME distance to where? To whatever nav aid that you're using there for that fix, whether it's your localizer, whether it's your VOR, whatever that's going to be. So you need to know where that is. How would you know that information? So when you look at the profile section of your approach plates, you'll see distance. Where else will you see distance?
Is it going to be in the chart supplement?
So
Or not the chart supplement, the
stick to your approach plate. Stick to your approach plate. Where else will you see distance?
Right here.
What's that? Okay, so you can see it on the plan view. You can see those legs out there as well, again from those waypoints. And then you can actually see from the plan view where the measuring is actually coming from. You can also see it there on your profile view where you see all of that stuff with all of those numbers. So for instance, if you look right there at this runway 10 diagram that you're looking at there, you remember the big D's right there? with that, you can see there at the threshold of that runway, you're still 1.7 miles away from something, right? So you can't just think that, you know, that's kind of what you're looking at, because if you look at that GOFN indicator there, where you can see your final approach fix and your glide slope there, where you see that Maltese cross, and you can see you're 7.8 miles from what? What's that?
The navigation.
From the navigation aid. You are 6.1 miles from what? The threshold of the runway. So that's where you have to be careful about what you're using there for your distances. You see here on this illustration in figure 27.27, all of these different fixes, and you can see what the distances are here from these, from all of your different waypoints. Okay? So just remember where they are and how to tell your distance. Now, we're going to get into a section here that we've been through before. Approach lighting system. What's the purpose of the approach lighting system? From where? From the sky, yes. From where?
From like to set the runway apart from other like things on the ground, like other potential like buildings and
Right.
landforms and trees.
How about a parallel road?
Yeah. Or like stuff that looks kind of lit up. Like a lot of times, I guess roads could look like that because they have street lights.
Oh, they do.
So.
And it's confusing. Yeah. It's happened. It's happened. So that it does, and it also will allow you on an instrument type approach when you're descending. Remember, and this was something too, and I meant to run this by you here. When you are when you're approaching that runway, you may and you're on the glide slope and you're approaching your DA or your DH. Anytime you hear DA or DH, you think what type of an approach? What type of instrument? Precision. Precision. MDA would be an indication of what? Non-precision. So you're thinking about a precision approach. Precision approaches normally will get you to about 200 feet off the ground, right at the DA. You may not be able to see the runway threshold from there, but what might you be able to see? You may be able to see those lights, and you have to know what you're looking for to make sure that you're lined up with that right runway and what to expect. Let's say that you see those lights, you see that rabbit, you know, you guys know what I'm talking about, the rabbit. It's that chase light that goes brrrt, 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 just like that, brrrt, you know, as it goes, you know, toward the runway. You see that, but you don't see the runway. What do you do? What do you do?
You're allowed to descend.
I
another
keep going. Thank you for remembering what I've said a dozen times.
100 feet.
Correct. You may descend now an additional 100 feet to kind of claw your way to that runway. There are 10 things that you need to be able to identify in order to land. Do you know where you can find them? How many of you have heard of a FAR aim? Right? Do you think you might be able to find the answer there in the FAR aim? I'll bet you can. In fact, I'll bet if you look, 14 CFR, part 91.175.
91 dot what? 14 CFR part 91.5.
175. 14 CFR, part 91.175. that will list the 10 things that you must be able to identify. You don't have to identify all of them, but you got to see at least one of them in order for you to land. And just understand that that array, that approach lighting system, that's going to be the one that in most cases, if you are truly landing that airplane, you're where you're supposed to be, and you are truly at the minimums as with regards to your visibility, you'll see that chase light before you start seeing runway. 14 CFR, part 91.175. Now there was another thing that we talked about. We talked about circling minimums, right? And you guys remembered that I said, you know, I'm trying to remember here, I want to say it's like 1.3 miles for the category A, 1.5 for category B, C is like 1.7, D is like 2.3, whatever that's going to be. Do you guys remember me talking about that? Where would you find that information?
I mean, you can find that in multiple places. You can find that in the reading. You can find that specifically.
There's only one place you're going to find this. FAR AIM. What does the AIM stand for?
Information.
Okay. Do you think you might be able to find it in the AIM?
Yes.
I believe you can. AIM 5-4-29. 5-4-29 in the AIM. Remember, the FAR AIM is a tremendous resource. There is an expectation for you to understand how to navigate the FAR AIM.
Was the bar in the book we downloaded?
Yes. Yes. So I'm just throwing that out there at you. Okay, so you can look here and you can see what types of lights there are. Now when you look at, for instance, if you look at the, is it the second line? Yes, the second line. The second line here on your ILS strip at the top. See that center box there, Tyler? Why do you think they go to the trouble to tell you what approach lighting system to expect for that approach? Why is it so prominently figured?
Because you're gonna have to know, like, if you have like horizontal and if you only have vertical, so you know you're gonna know if you're on an instrument approach, like, are you gonna have the opportunity to get down lower, or will that not even be an option?
It can also help you identify if you have like the correct airport, I guess, because if it's not like a specified one for the airport, then you'd be like, well.
Well, again, by this point, by the time you reach that box on that second strip at the top of the ILS approach plate, you have had 4 different opportunities to make sure that you have identified the correct airport.
Yeah.
So let's hope you don't get that far before that happens. But you have all of the frequencies, you have everything dialed in, because if you don't have that correct frequency, you're not going to get that far to even be able to see those lights. So you got to know what you're looking for. All right, you guys can read these to read what all of these different things are, all of their different colors. Oh, look at the colors. What's the difference between reel and rail?
Yeah.
Reel, runway end, identifier lights. Rail,
It's like the identifier.
alignment. Thank you, Diego. Good job. So, understand the difference there. Mauser stands for what?
Medium intensity approach lighting system.
Good job. VASI. What's VASI?
Visual approach.
Slope indicator.
Very good. So we've got a couple different things. You have kind of probably the most prevalent out there is going to be a 2-bar VASI. Most of the time, I don't know how many precision approaches are going to have a 2-bar VASI at the end of that beam. Most of it's going to have either a PAPI or they're going to have maybe a 4-bar VASI. They'll have something else to be a little bit more precise than the 2-bar. That's just me talking there. What do we have on the approach end of 1.5 coming into Aspen? What do we have? We do have a PAPI. That is good. Good job, Gavin. If you look at 27.33, this is that part that we were talking about here before. So you can see your glide slope will intersect at the runway with your glide slope transmitter in most cases. That puts you at the 1,000-foot markers. If you make that quote-unquote glide, and again, understand that when we say glide, we're not actually gliding. We are coming in with power. I just kind of want to throw that out there also. PAPI, this is what we have in Aspen. You guys know how that works. Is it better to get your approach slope lighting from above or below?
Yeah, above. Oh no.
Below. You want to, yeah.
Well, because yeah, you can
You want to
intercept it.
intercept.
You want to intercept it from
Yeah.
below. Why?
Just, well, you can't make heroic actions. You don't want to have to like
Because the
all
Oh, yeah,
of a
yeah.
sudden
You know the
go
false
into like
glide
a
slope
very
as well.
steep glide slope and risk getting under anyways. It's easier to intercept from below than it is from above.
And what's the other risk?
Like you
The false glide
Oh,
False
the
glide
false,
slope.
yeah.
Thank you, Gavin.
That's
False
really
glide
interesting
slope.
how it, like, can reflect off the ground.
Yeah.
I did not know about that at
There
all.
will be times in your training from an emergency standpoint that you guys will be practicing what we refer to as short approaches. We don't say power off landings out here because what we don't want to say on the radio to send the general public into hysteria with somebody who might just be, you know, sitting out there on Red Mountain wearing their tinfoil hat listening to the radio at the airport talking about power off landings. Our code is short approach. Why do we practice a short approach or a power off landing? Why do we do that?
in case you're given no other choice.
Why do we do go around checklists?
Make sure you don't lose
For when? Just in case you
Uh-huh.
when you have to go
Gonna
around.
go around.
We work for the best, but we plan for the worst. That's kind of it. Things get quiet in the cockpit, we'll show you how to land that sucker out on the airport instead of out on a road or in a field somewhere. Sometimes when you're doing short approaches, you'll see just how quickly you can slow that airplane down if you need to. So, in fact, I have a video that I did 4 years ago maybe, where they had me come in and do a short approach just for traffic because they had me circling over Snowmass 11 times coming in, and they were trying to wedge me in between traffic coming in. Yeah, it was at Christmas. And so with that, it was entertaining.
Can we see it?
Well, maybe at the end of the class we'll look at some of those, but yeah. Okay, runway edge lighting. Hurl, Merle, and Laurel. It's kind of like my kin. Hurl, Merle, and Laurel. We's kin. In runway lighting. When I say in runway lighting, what am I talking about here?
Like you have, like inside the runway, there's lighting.
Yeah. Kind of on the surface of the runway itself, somewhat embedded in the runway, somewhat smooth, you'll have lights. Now, it's not really smooth. Remember we talk about centerline discipline and how important centerline discipline is? The one area where it's okay to be like a foot off is to get your nose of your nose wheel of your airplane off those lights, because it'll absolutely shake your dental work when you're coming in, because there's not a lot of give in that nose wheel. Your mains are kind of meant to absorb a lot of the the impact, and they're a little more shocky like that. Your main gear is pretty stiff. So your nose gear is pretty stiff. So when you have that nose wheel on those lights, you know, it's pretty awful. So you can be off about a foot, you know, and get to the side of those lights, just so you know, just so you don't, you know, beat the airplane up too bad. Understand what the lights look like around these runways. By the way, you're looking at a precision runway marker right there, kind of. So on taxiway edge lighting, the color is?
Blue.
Okay. And then we have center line there with those. We'll have,
Green.
okay, a lot of times we'll have on the sides of the runway, the colors will be,
White.
threshold is
Yellow.
green, okay, and the end lights, or the opposite direction, will be illuminated red.
With the threshold and end, are they like directional lights?
Some are, some aren't. Some will show that it's green from the approach end, and you'll see red off in the distance. But then sometimes what will happen is they have the ability to turn those lights on and change the color of the lights. So for instance, if the winds change and they're coming around from the other way, they'll switch it. And so they'll have the green for the end that they're using and the red for the one that they're not. Yeah. One of the other things that is pretty cool with this, and this is something that I think I told you guys before about the Ohio State University, and what they let us do on XED with that. Yeah, with these panels in the center lines leading you off. That was just really pretty awesome. Runway end lights, runway end identifier lights, we talked about that. Taxi lights, talked about that. Controlled lighting system. Who controls the lights on the runway?
Pilots or ATC?
Depends.
Do like a little clicky thing.
It depends. Because if the airport is in operation with an active control tower, most of the time the tower will control your lights. If the airport is closed, then what? Are you got no lights? What do you got?
No, there's a special channel thing involved.
You can
So-
push the
Oh, yeah.
Okay. What do you call that? PCL, pilot controlled lighting. Normally it is going to be on the Unicom frequency or the Common Traffic Advisory frequency. And as Cooper was talking about, your push to talk switch on your yoke or on the stick, you click it X number of times to get a particular effect from the lights. Tell me the number of clicks and the effect. 7 is high.
5 for medium.
Uh-huh. Tell me how you use that.
So you click it 3 times consecutive.
You go
You do
onto the
7 when you're far away.
What? Okay.
When you're
Right.
runway.
So why do you want to get it up on high when you're trying to find the runway?
So you can see it from
So
a
you
greater
can see it.
distance.
Yeah. Okay. Then you enter the traffic pattern. Then what?
You demo.
Go to medium. Then you turn final. Then what?
You have to go in,
Why do you go low?
So you don't get
so you
blind.
don't blind yourself.
So you don't get
Illusions. Think illusions. What illusions would you have with real bright lights? What would the tendency to be?
It's
closer than it is.
No, you're higher.
You're going to think that you're lower than you actually are. Your airplane is going to be higher. You'll tend to round out higher and dump that sucker on the runway. And that's not good.
What if there's a plane in front of you who has the low lights on and you're behind him and you click the highlights on?
Dueling PCLs?
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh yeah, yeah.
Happens a
It's
lot.
well, it doesn't happen a lot, but because again, you have to think about who has the priority. The lowest airplane or the
Yeah.
airplane that's in front of you has the priority.
Okay.
Remember that you are not at any point to attempt to dive under someone to gain an advantage in landing. You have to wait your turn. Okay, that's, by the way, that is a regulation. Okay, and so what you do is you're following that airplane. You let them control the lights to land. Okay,
How long does it take for them to turn off?
I think they're timed. Is it 15 minutes? I think it's 15 minutes until they'll turn themselves off. On a cross country, like on a cross country at night, it's a good idea to again dial in to the various airports that you're passing near, just to make sure that number one, if things get quiet, you got a place to go, but also what can that do as you're going cross country and you're lighting up those runways as you kind of go along? What helps you navigate? It helps you make sure that you are where you think you are. So, and it's a good habit to kind of get into. Now, what you don't want to do is that if you see the runway lights on somewhere over there, you kind of need to assume that somebody is over there landing. Don't mess with them, okay?
Oh, yeah, so
You know,
it switches.
yeah, don't be that guy.
Like keep flipping them on.
Yeah. Don't be that guy. Understand the effects of haze. Understand the effects of a clear day.
It was so hazy.
All right, so here we are. Let's take a look at the precision runway. This is what runways are going to look like in most cases that have a precision approach associated with that runway. The first thing you'll see, the threshold markers, or you'll hear this referred to in some cases as the piano keys. So you'll hear about that. Then, just beyond the piano keys is when you will have the actual identifier for the runway, and that will be the number. Tell me again where the numbers come from.
They're
Magnetic. So 20. So is that 20 degrees? 200. So what does that mean?
200 degrees.
The last of the third numbers gets lopped off here with that? Okay, all right. So if I'm landing on this runway, what direction am I facing?
No, you're facing southwest.
Southwest, yeah. Southwest. South by southwest.
Southwest.
South, southwest.
Yeah.
That's your direction, south, southwest. Right? Southwest is going to be 235. I'm sorry, 225, not 235. I thought, oh, that sounds wrong. Okay, 225, so yes. L, what does that stand for?
Left.
Oh, left, okay, all right. So if you have something that's marked 20 left, then it stands to reason that there could be a parallel runway. Ding, 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 ding.
So does the left and right refer to if you're approaching? Okay.
So that's pilots left and pilots right?
Correct. On approach. Yeah. So you could have 20 left, you could have 20 center, you could have 20 right. Now you've got parallel runways here. So now, hold on. So now you think about this with parallel runways. So now what do we need to be thinking?
Lighting.
Do I have the right runway?
Correct. Am I on the right one? How do I make sure that I'm not here? I'm not here. That I'm not at the wrong runway.
Are there ever runways that will be like 4 or more in a row parallel?
Not that I've ever seen.
Okay.
That's actually really.
Well, I mean, Denver kind of has it.
I think that's really.
But they're off by a degree, I think.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, that's smart. So
That's smart though.
2-0 center
them right
left.
next to each
2-0 left.
Good, that's very efficient.
Well,
Denver like a box?
right now Denver is a box. However, they're looking to change that. They are actually looking to do a runway with a northwest southeast orientation.
Where?
So, well, they've got a lot of
Would that be like
property. I'm sorry.
How would that be oriented compared to the rest of the runways?
Well, all of them right now are either east, west, or north, south.
So
In Denver.
Would it intersect the other runways?
Well, I don't know. No, I don't think so. I don't think it would intersect like it does with some of the others. They've got enough room out there that they don't have to do that. They can go way east out there to kind of make that work. Okay, so here we have, you'll notice that at every 500 feet, you're going to see some paint, right? But you're going to see this big box. Now, this one right here, they call these the 1,000-foot markers. I will say this. Most of the precision runways that I have seen, that 1,000-foot marker, this box is twice the size of what it's showing right there. Because normally it's a big box. So that's the way that they kind of identify that 1,000-foot marker piece, because that is on an instrument approach, kind of your aim point. Now here's where it messes with your head. When you start your private work, the very first thing that you're going to be doing when you're doing target practice with those airplanes is looking for the numbers. Your flight instructor is going to say, okay, I want those numbers in this spot on your windscreen, and the only thing I want to see happen is those numbers get bigger. What does that mean? That means that you're not descending and you're not climbing. That means that you are right on that glide slope, and the only thing that's happening is those numbers are getting bigger. Okay? Then you transition to instrument work. And you see the runway, and what do you want to do? You want to try to go to the numbers. But you're set up to go to the 1,000-foot markers. And it messes with your head. At least it did mine. Diego.
This is kind of related, not really, but like the argument when we talk about circular runways. Have you heard about that?
Say that again, Diego.
I've seen something about circular runways. So it's like a runway that's just when it's a circle, so you like planes can land and take off on opposite sides at the same time.
How do you plan stuff?
It's like it's big enough so like
Is it
you
like
don't
an
really
oval?
notice the curve.
Like a racetrack?
It's like a racetrack.
Yeah, basically.
It's like angle.
Yeah,
What?
they've been talking about it's like super efficient.
I've never seen that.
Somewhere has it.
How would you?
It's like-
That makes no
I
sense.
guess it makes sense because you could just pull onto the runway, even if it wasn't your turn, you would just get right in the line.
Yeah,
It feels
but
like a
your
track
lane-
shaped
lane,
like
trying to
a-
go
It would have to be
something
shaped like a
angle.
like
Your
a
turn
gigantic
while waiting
track,
has
so
to
that
be
way you'd
straight.
have
Like a
some
racetrack.
straightaway, and then you'd have a turn.
Yeah.
That seems like really
Well, I don't know. Okay, guys, here we are. Let's finish up. Runways. These we talked about these last fall. What these means. The displaced thresholds. What does this chevron here mean? What is that?
do not land.
Okay, I can't land on that, right?
But you can go to take off there.
Well, I could take off here if I had the arrows, but you can't do anything here on the chevrons. It's just an overrun. Inoperative ILS components. So what could be inoperative on these ILS components? What does that mean?
The vertical assistance.
You may have a glide slope that's out. Okay, you have a glide slope that's out and you have an approach plate that says ILS or LOC on it. Now what do you got? Localizer. That's correct. Because remember, without the glide slope, you have no ILS. You're now,
If you're horizontal, if you,
your localizer is it.
yeah.
That's it. And so you're going to have an MDA as opposed to a DA, correct? Yes.
ILS in Aspen on top of Aspen Mountain.
When we get done with this chapter, because I want you dialed into this. When we get done with that, I'll show you Aspen and I'll show you Eagle. Because you need to learn the standard stuff here first.
Yeah.
Then I'll show you the non-standard.
Because I think I camped right below the ILS this weekend. I'm pretty sure that was it.
You could have. Okay, flying a typical ILS, this part here, guys, go over this, ask me any questions. Well, that's what's next.
All right.
Ask me any questions about this tomorrow, because the guide here is good for anything that we missed, but understand, we have beat this to death, and we've actually flown the ILS on this. But I want you to understand it. Ask me any questions about it tomorrow.
Miss Chard, do we have a quiz this week?
Yes,
What day?
I believe it's going to be Wednesday.
It's on chapters 24.
We're going to review tomorrow. You're welcome. All right, guys, remember, ask me any questions about where we stopped to the end of the chapter tomorrow, because we're going to be doing review for the quiz on Wednesday.
You should look at circular runways, Mr. Ross.
Do what now?
I think you should look at circular runways.
Keep, remind me of that later.
I don't know.
Okay.
I wasn't there.